Okay, boys and girls, we're going to do some more dividing. This time we're going to do some division with remainders, and what does that remainder mean, and the different ways to write the remainder. Scott and his family went to hike a trail that is 1,365 miles long. They will hike equal parts of the trail on 12 different hiking trips. How many miles will Scott's family hike on each trip? So if we're going to circle the dividend, that's how many we have all together. And then if we underline the divisor, that's 12. That tells us how many equal parts or equal trips we're going to divide that dividend into. When you solve a division problem with a remainder, the way you interpret the remainder depends on the situation and the question. Sometimes you need to use both the quotient and the remainder. You can do that by writing the remainder as a fraction. And we're going to work on this because I'm not sure that we did a lot of that last year. First, divide to find the quotient and the remainder. Then decide how to use the quotient and the remainder to answer the question. Okay, so let's go back over our definitions. What represents the number of trips Scott's family will need? So how many trips are we going to take? That is the 12. What is the 12? It is the divisor. How many trips? Please write divisor in there. Blank represents the whole number part of the number of miles Scott and his family will hike each year, which is our answer. So the answer is our quotient. Blank represents the number of miles left over. So these are the miles that we're not going to hike because I can't do it evenly, and that is the remainder. Alright, let's switch back and let's figure out this division problem. So I wrote down it as a problem first, and here's my dividend, here's my divisor. My dividend always goes inside, my divisor goes outside of the house. So I know 12 can't go into 1, so then I just look here, 12, can it go into 13? 13 divided by 1, or 12 times what? 1 equals 13. 12 times 1 equals 12. I subtract that out because that's what I had. 13 subtracted by 2 is 1. 0. Bring down my next digit. Now I got to ask myself, 16 divided by 12 equals what? Or 12 times what equals 16, or is close to? I know that's 1. 12 times 1 is 16. Or 12 times 1 is 12, sorry. Subtract 4. Bring down my next answer, 5. 45. 12 times what goes into 45? And I know that 12 times 3, because 12 over here, I know 12 times 4 is 48, which is too much. So 12 times 3 is 36. I'm going to subtract, I have to borrow. And I have a leftover of 9. Now here, so I have a remainder of 9. Here's how we make it a fraction. This is probably new to you guys. So your remainder is how many are left over out of the divisor. So it's 9 out of 12. I have 9 parts left out of 12. 9 miles is left over out of 12. Now, last year you simplified your fractions, and we want to always simplify our fractions. So this 9 and 12, what can go into 9 and 12? Well, I can divide both of those by 3 because I know they both have a factor of 3. So if I divide 9 by 3, I get 4. And if I divide 12, because what I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. 12 divided by 3, I get 4. Sorry, I don't get 4 up here. I get 3. Excuse me, 3/4. So if I look back on my paper, you notice that here's my work. Came out the same way ours did. And there's the remainder 9. But the remainder represents 9 miles, which can be also divided by 12 parts. It can be written as a fraction, which is 9/12. Write the quotient with the remainder written as a fraction in its simplest form. That's when we had to divide these both by a factor that could go into both of them. And that's where we went to 113, my quotient, with my remainder of 3/4. So that is my answer. We'll do more of those with the remainder and changing them into fractions as we're going along. A segment of the Appalachian Trail that runs through Pennsylvania is 232 miles long. Scott and his family want to hike 9 miles each day on the trail. How many days will they hike exactly 9 miles? So here we're kind of looking at divide to find the quotient and the remainder. Since the remainder shows that there is not enough miles left for another 9 miles, you will not use that in your answer. So this is where they talked about looking at the answer. Here they just want to know how many days they will hike exactly 9 miles. So that's why you always have to ask yourself, what do they want to know? So let's figure out this problem. And I wrote it. Here's my divisor. My dividend. Here's my divisor. My dividend is how many miles I have altogether. And my divisor tells me how many equal miles I want to do each day. So let's start figuring. 9 can't go into 2, so I'm going to look at 9 times what will get me close to 23. Well, 9 times 3 is 27, so that's too much, so I'm going to go to 2. 9 times 2 equals 18. I have to borrow because I have a larger number on the bottom. 13, take away 8 is 5. Drop down my 2. 9 times what will get me close to 52, or right on? Well, I know 9 times 6 is 54, sorry, 54. So I know that 9 times 5 is 45. I have to borrow 7. There's nothing else to drop down, so I have my remainder of 7. Or I could have wrote it 7 over 9. I know that 7 is a prime number, so that's the simplest form. But when I go back to my worksheet, it just wanted to know, first of all, so they will be hiking exactly how many days. And the answer is 25, because they're not asking you how much is going to be left over. So to hike the 7 remaining miles, he will need to add 1 more day. So then it would be 26 days, because they'd have to add that to go those 7 extra miles. If Scott hikes 9 miles each day except the last day, how many miles will he hike on the last day? So if he hikes 9 miles every day, on the last day we have that remainder of 7, and he hikes 9 miles every day, so we know that he will have 7 more miles to go. Alright, let's look at this story problem. A sporting goods store is going to ship 1,252 sleeping bags. Each shipping container can hold 8 sleeping bags. How many cartons are needed to ship all of the sleeping bags? So we have to do the division problem again. So here's a key word, guys. When you're reading, that's why it's so important. It says how many cartons are needed to ship all So we want to make sure we get all of them so that even if we have the leftovers, that we need a carton to fill that. So let's go and figure this out. Okay, I have my dividend written down, how many sleeping bags there are altogether, divided by my divisor, how many can go in a carton, how many am I splitting that 1,252 up, so that goes inside my house, my divisor goes on the outside. So if I look, I know it can't go into 1, 12 divided by 8 equals, so I'm going to think the inverse, 8 times what gets me to 12? 1. 8 times 1 equals 8. Subtract 4. Drop down my next answer, my next digit, and now I have 45 divided by 8, so 8 times what gets me close to 45? I know that's 5. 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract, drop down my 5, bring down my 2. Now I have 52. I know that 8 times 7 is 54. That's too much, so 8 times 6 is 48. I have to borrow 4. So I have a remainder of 4 left over. Now that we can make that a fraction. So remainder 4 out of my divisor, 8. Now these are even numbers, so I know they both can be divided by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. They're still even numbers. I'm going to divide them by 2 again. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So my answer is 156 1/2, or 4. So because I know all that, I can go back to my worksheet, and so I need to put my answer down. There's my remainder. But remember, since there are how many leftover bags? There are 4. How many cartons will I need? 156 will I need. That's to get equally, but I still need a carton to hold my 4 leftovers, so I have to add 1 more. So this is 157 cartons will be needed for the sleeping bag. That's why they tell you to underline or really look at what is the question asking you. Alright, I would like you and your partner to do 1, 2, and 3 for sure together. Do them on whiteboards. Come back, check them after you've done them all and you've talked to each other about it. And then I'd like you to move on and do your homework. You need to do 2, 3, and 4. I would really like to see you estimate. We didn't estimate, but it sure makes a difference. It helps. It's something we should always do. Read the question carefully and write your answer and label your answer, please. Please do 2, 3, 4. Show me all your work. Wouldn't even hurt to check your answer, guys. Then do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Just a minute. I'm changing that. I don't want you to do 6. Let's just do 2, 3, and 5, but I want you to estimate if you need to, check your work if you need to, show me your work, please. Then if you get done, please go back to this and work on 4, 5, 6, and 7, or you can work on this going unlocking the problem. The more you practice, the better you'll get.